Getting to Versailles from Paris on the RERC train is the easiest option because it puts you at the Versailles Château Rive Gauche station, the closest station to the entry gates. Additionally, the RERC line typically has trains running about every 5 to 10 minutes versus about every 15 to 20 minutes for Line N or Line L, so typically, you will have less of a wait. Depending on your Paris departure point, it takes about 25 to 30 minutes on the RERC. Plan your trip to arrive early to beat the crowds. We took the first train of the day today, which departed Paris just before 6 a.m.
So this is the approach to Versailles. One big mama of a place. There's Miss Betty with her fashionable Italian-made bag.
Indisputably one of the most opulent buildings in the world, the Palace of Versailles is the epitome of French royalty. Louis XIV commissioned architects Louis Levauve and Jules Hardouin to build the Château de Versailles in 1664, on the site of his father's small hunting lodge. It became one of the largest palaces in Europe, accommodating up to 20,000 courtiers at a time. The interiors are extravagant, and the highlights include the royal apartments and the world-renowned Hall of Mirrors. The Grand Trianon, constructed in 1687, and the Petit Trianon, constructed in 1762, are also located in the park.
Betty's up to her photography again, ignoring me.
I decided this is going to be my makeup room.
This is going to be a makeup room?
Yes, this is where I apply my makeup.
It's a little small there.
This is the Hercules room.
I'm going to follow this girl. She looks like she knows where she's going.
Yes. All covered. The colours are amazing. I wonder where it dates from.
Located in the Palace of Versailles, the Galerie des Glaces, the Hall of Mirrors, is the main gallery of the palace and also one of the most legendary places in the world. The central feature of the hall is the 17 mirrored arcs, and each one of them consists of 21 mirrors. Mirrors were considered to be one of the most extravagant possessions during the 17th century, and to gain political and economic success, Jean-Baptiste Colbert lured many expert workers from the Venetian Republic to France. During that era, the Hall of Mirrors was used as a meeting point for the public and the people of the court. The Treaty of Versailles was signed here in 1919, which ended the World War I. This historical hall has seen numerous royal weddings and births in its many years of existence, and is now used to welcome visiting heads of state and other world dignitaries. The Hall of Mirrors is 240 feet long and 34 feet wide and contains 357 mirrors. It looks simply amazing. The construction began in 1678 and was completed in 1684 as the third phase of construction at the palace. The windows on one side of the hall overlook the stunning gardens of Versailles with its impressive fountains. This was intentional, providing a picturesque view of the landscaped grounds during events. The ceiling of the Hall of Mirrors features 30 magnificent paintings by famed French artist Charles Lebrun, depicting significant events from the reign of Louis XIV. The central scene is titled "The King Rules by Himself," highlighting the Sun King's claim to absolute power in defiance of the Holy Roman Empire in Spain, who appear on the opposite side of the same panel. This is the king's bedroom.
Miss Betty.
Hello,
Are you still at Versailles?
I am at the Chateau Versailles. This is right here where the Sun King's bedroom was, which is the three Palladium-style windows. So each morning when the sun rose, they'd open those doors, and that's how the king awoke, and then he would receive people. People actually wanted to see him get out of bed and do his morning routine. It was kind of like a big deal.
Huh. Wow. Wowsy dowsy.
I'm sure he went someplace cheaper for his morning constitution. Then he'd look out into that courtyard and be the ruler of all of France.
And then he'd have his coffee.
Right. Maybe a little
Go
croissant.
back to bed. Yeah.
The Palace of Versailles was endowed with an orangery in 1663, built by Louis le Vauve. It constructed in an excellent location, facing directly south and sheltered from prevailing cold winds by its position below the south parterre. The scale, height and pure lines of the orangery, which sits just below the palace, make it one of Jules Hardouin-Manson's crowning achievements, demonstrating his talent as a great architect. Orange trees from Portugal, Spain and Italy, lemon trees, oleander, palm and pomegranate trees, some more than 200 years old, are all housed in the orangery during the winter and spread out across its parterre in summer. The orangery parterre covers no less than 3 hectares. During the reign of Louis XIV it was adorned with several sculptures which are now kept in the Musée du Louvre. It consists of 4 grass sections and a circular pool. During the summer there are over 1,000 containers with orange trees, palm trees, oleander, pomegranate trees and eugenia bushes that are kept inside the building during winter.
eager to pull the sun across the sky. Apollo is accompanied by a cherubic Cupid and drives his chariot, hoisted out of the water by 4 spirited horses, with as many dolphins between them and 4 tritons trumpeting his fame at the 4 cardinal directions. Each sculpture in this group by Jean-Baptiste Touby, 1629 to 1700, has its own vitality, giving the whole a lifelike energy.
Back on. So you figure out where we are?
Yep.
The Grand Trinon was erected by Jules Hardouin Mansett in 1687 on the site of the former porcelain Trinon. Commissioned by Louis XIV in 1670 to get away from the arduous pomp of life in the court and to pursue his affair with Madame de Montespan, the Grand Trinon is perhaps the most refined architectural ensemble found on the royal estate of Versailles. Of pink marble and porphyry, with marvelous gardens, wrote Jules Hardouin Mansett. The architect respected Louis XIV instructions to the letter, and the king kept a close eye on the progress of the building work. He even personally commissioned the construction of the peristyle. With its splendid view of the Grand Canal and its mirrored walls, this is the finest room in the south wing. It was the last room in the suite of apartments which Louis XIV occupied in this wing of the palace from 1691 to 1703 and served as his council chamber. Like the majority of the Trinon Palace, this room has retained its original design, but not its furniture, which was sold off during the Revolution and subsequently replaced by Napoleon. Formerly the bedroom of Louis XIV, this room is divided by a row of Corinthian columns. In the First Empire period, the former royal bedchamber was split in two to form a smaller bedroom and a sitting room for the Empress Marie-Louise, who selected the furniture you can see here today. The only exception is the bed, which stood in Napoleon's bedroom in the Tuileries Palace. Louis Philippe created this spacious lounge by combining two existing rooms. The king and his family were fond of the Grand Trianon and would spend their evenings together in this comfortable lounge furnished in the contemporary style. Games tables and sewing tables, padded armchairs and sofas upholstered in yellow pearl with blue motifs. Completed by Anne-Jacques Gabriel in 1768, the new palace on the Trianon estate was named the Petit Trianon to distinguish it from the existing marble Trianon, which then became known as the Grand Trianon. It was here, in April 1774, that Louis XV experienced the first symptoms of smallpox, which would lead to his death a few days later and usher in the reign of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. The new King Louis XVI gave the Petit Trianon as a gift to his wife, who quickly made it her own and ordered an extensive redesign of the external areas. Louis XV botanical gardens were soon replaced by an Anglo-Oriental garden, which was more in keeping with the fashion of the day and which Marie Antoinette was constantly adding to and embellishing. The Hamlet is the centerpiece of the gardens of the estate of Trianon. It was designed as a palace, broken up into several rustic structures called fabriques, or small buildings, some of whose interiors are luxuriously swathed in silk. Arranged on the banks of the Great Lake in the rural garden, was built between 1783 and 1786 by Richard Michewan, the spirit of getting back to nature as advocated by Jean-Jacques Rousseau and based on designs by Hubert Robert, who was inspired by the half-timbered houses of Normandy. During the Revolution, the hamlet had quite a rough time. Built without much thought for longevity, as was the norm for such follies, the cottages aged badly and were damaged by bad weather. Napoleon ordered a full restoration between 1810 and 1812, but in doing so had the most dilapidated structures torn down, including the barn and the working dairy. A second campaign of restoration work saved the hamlet from certain ruin in the 1930s, thanks to a donation from John Rockefeller. Part of the hamlet was restored once again in the late 20th century, with some buildings, including the windmill, returned to their original configuration. The farm, which almost totally disappeared over the course of the 19th century, was reconstructed in 2006 and is now home to a variety of animals looked after by the Foundation for Animal Welfare.